Here's something strange. India is the world's fifth largest economy, yet most content about it falls into two categories, either poverty tourism or Bollywood glamour. But here's what I discovered after spending 3 months researching this. India isn't one country, it's more like 50 countries wearing the same passport. Today, I'm sharing 15 things about India that challenged everything I thought I knew, not because they're crazy or insane, but because they're real, verifiable, and almost never discussed. Let's start with something that broke my brain. India contains almost every climate zone on Earth, simultaneously. Right now, in the northern region of Ladakh, temperatures can drop to -40 degrees Celsius. Just 2,000 kilometers south in Kerala, it's 35 degrees and humid. But here's what makes this remarkable. These aren't just different seasons. This happens at the same time, on the same day, in the same country. To put this in perspective, imagine if Chicago's winter and Miami's summer existed in the same nation, just a 3-hour flight apart. This means India manufactures winter sports equipment and surfboards domestically for its own population. The agricultural diversity this creates is staggering. You can grow apples, coffee, saffron and coconuts all within the same borders. Most travelers only experience one climate zone, which is why India remains so misunderstood. India has 22 official languages, but here's the part that doesn't make sense. It has somewhere between 720 and 780 languages total, depending on how you classify dialects. That's more linguistic diversity than all of Europe combined. I'm not talking about accents, I mean completely different languages with different scripts, grammar structures, and zero mutual intelligibility. A person from Kerala literally cannot understand someone from Punjab without a common language like English or Hindi. Here's where it gets fascinating. India prints its currency in 17 languages. Every single banknote is a miniature linguistic document. The Indian Constitution, when it was written in 1950, is the longest constitution of any sovereign country, partly because it had to be carefully written to respect this linguistic complexity. This creates a paradox. India is simultaneously unified and incredibly fragmented. National identity exists alongside deeply regional identities that predate the modern nation by centuries. In the northeastern state of Meghalaya, the Khasi tribe practices full matrilineal. Property, titles and family names pass through women, not men. The youngest daughter inherits everything. Men move into their wives' homes after marriage. Children take their mother's surname. Approximately 1 million people live under matrilineal systems in India. This isn't ancient history. It's happening right now, in 2025, and it completely contradicts the perception of India as uniformly patriarchal. What's remarkable is how this coexists within the same legal framework as the rest of India. The Indian constitution allows for customary law, meaning different communities can maintain their traditional systems alongside national law. Meghalaya has one of the highest literacy rates for women in India and relatively low domestic violence statistics compared to national averages. Correlation isn't causation, but it raises interesting questions about social structure and outcomes. This is the India that doesn't fit the narrative, and that's exactly why it's important. India's space program operates on a budget smaller than the production cost of the movie Gravity. In 2014, India became the first nation to successfully reach Mars orbit on its first attempt. The entire Mars orbiter mission cost $74 million. NASA's Maven Mars mission cost $671 million, while India's Mars mission was $74 million. That's less than the budget for a mid-tier Hollywood film and less than 1/9 of NASA's comparable mission. How? Extreme engineering efficiency, lower labor costs, and what ISRO calls frugal innovation, designing systems that accomplish goals with minimal resources. India launches satellites for over 50 countries commercially because it can do it cheaper and reliably. In 2017, it launched 104 satellites on a single rocket, a world record. This creates a fascinating contradiction. A country where millions lack electricity can send spacecraft to Mars. It's not a contradiction of misplaced priorities. It's a demonstration that development doesn't follow a linear path. The technology developed for space missions has applications in telecommunications, agriculture, and disaster management that benefit the broader population. The Tirupati Temple in Andhra Pradesh receives more visitors per year than the Vatican. Between 50,000 and 100,000 pilgrims visit daily. The temple's annual budget exceeds $3 billion, making it one of the wealthiest religious institutions on Earth. But here's what's fascinating. This wealth circulates. The temple runs universities, hospitals, provides free meals to millions, and employs over 20,000 people directly. India has thousands of temples with significant economic footprints. They function as parallel economic systems, receiving donations, employing artisans, feeding communities, and funding social services. The Tirupati Temple alone serves 30,000 free meals daily. That's nearly 11 million meals per year. This is an economy that doesn't show up in GDP calculations, but represents a massive movement of resources and social welfare infrastructure that predates the modern state. Western economic models struggle to categorize this. It's not quite charity, not quite government, and not quite business. It's something else entirely. India's economy rises or falls based on weather patterns that are thousands of years old. The monsoon, seasonal rain that arrives between June and September, still determines approximately 15% of India's GDP directly through agriculture. If the monsoon is late, weak, or irregular, it cascades through the entire economy. Crop failures, food inflation, reduced rural purchasing power, and economic slowdown. You know, India has nuclear weapons, a space program, and a thriving tech industry, but its economic health still partially depends on rain arriving on schedule. This isn't because India lacks technology, it's because the monsoon irrigates an area so vast that replicating it with artificial irrigation would be economically and environmentally impossible. Climate change is making monsoons less predictable, which creates existential economic uncertainty. A bad monsoon season affects 700 million people who depend on agriculture for their livelihood. This is what makes India fascinating: cutting-edge modernity and ancient patterns coexisting, neither cancelling out the other. In the village of Mattur in Karnataka, daily conversation happens in Sanskrit, a language most linguists consider dead. Children grow up speaking Sanskrit at home. Shop transactions, gossip, arguments, all in a language that hasn't been a primary spoken language for over 1,000 years. So this all started as a deliberate revival project back in the 1980s. The village made a collective decision to preserve Sanskrit as a living language. Now, why does this matter? Well, because it really demonstrates something crucial. Culture isn't preserved in museums, it's preserved in practice, in living communities making conscious choices. Sanskrit is, after all, the liturgical language of Hinduism, the source language for Hindi, and many other Indian languages, and it contains ancient scientific and literary texts. Mattur, for example, proves that language death isn't inevitable, it's a choice. When a community decides to keep something alive, they absolutely can. And, interestingly, there are now several villages attempting similar revivals. This, in turn, challenges the narrative of inevitable cultural homogenization. Diwali isn't just a holiday, it's an economic event that, for a while, brings normal commerce to a halt. During this 5-day festival, about 1.3 billion people take part in some form of celebration. It's actually the single largest synchronized consumption event in the world. Gold sales spike, real estate transactions increase. People buy new clothes, electronics, vehicles. It's considered auspicious to make major purchases during Diwali. Indian businesses, in fact, plan their entire fiscal year around Diwali. Product launches, sales targets, inventory planning, everything is calibrated to this period. But here's what's really culturally significant. Diwali is a Hindu festival, but Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and people of all backgrounds participate in the celebrations and the economy it generates. This is secularism in practice, not forced neutrality, but genuine cultural participation that crosses religious boundaries. The festival also involves cleaning homes, paying off debts, and reconciling relationships. It's like a cultural reset button that happens every year. In the rainforests of Meghalaya, bridges are grown, not built. The Khasi and Jaintia tribes train the aerial roots of rubber fig trees to grow across rivers. Over 10 to 15 years, these roots intertwine and strengthen, creating living bridges that can support the weight of 50 people simultaneously. Some of these bridges are over 500 years old and are actually getting stronger with time, the opposite of conventional infrastructure, which degrades. This is sustainable engineering before sustainability became a buzzword. These bridges require no maintenance, no replacement, and improve the local ecosystem by preventing erosion. The double-decker route bridge in Nongriat is a UNESCO heritage site and a functional piece of infrastructure that thousands of people use regularly. Why isn't this technique used globally? Because it requires patience, generational thinking, and deep ecological knowledge, things industrial civilization systematically devalues. These bridges represent a completely different relationship with nature, not conquering or extracting, but collaborating and waiting. Black pepper was once so valuable that it was used as currency, and India controlled the global supply. The spice trade from India's Malabar coast was the primary driver of European colonization. Columbus was trying to reach India when he stumbled upon the Americas. Spices, pepper, cardamom, cinnamon, cloves were worth more than gold by weight in medieval Europe. They preserved food, had medicinal properties, and honestly demonstrated wealth. India's control of spice production gave it enormous economic power for centuries. The Portuguese, Dutch, French, and British didn't colonize India for resources like oil or minerals. They came for spices and, well, stayed for everything else. Today, India is still the world's largest producer and exporter of spices, worth over $4 billion annually. But here's the forgotten part. This trade created the first truly global economy. Indian spices connected Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia in commercial networks that predated modern globalization by centuries. The food you eat today, Thai curry, Italian pasta sauce, Middle Eastern spice blends, all trace back to this trade network that had India at its center. India contains a tropical island territory called Lakshadweep, 36 islands with turquoise water and coral atolls that rival the Maldives. The population is approximately 70,000 people. Tourist infrastructure, well, it's minimal, and international awareness is honestly virtually zero. These islands are environmentally fragile and culturally unique. The population is predominantly Muslim, speaks Malayalam, and has a distinct coconut-based economy. But here's the concerning part. Like the Maldives, Lakshadweep is threatened by rising sea levels. Some islands are already experiencing erosion and saltwater contamination of freshwater sources. The Indian government has restricted tourism to preserve the ecosystem and culture, which creates a paradox. Protection through obscurity means the world doesn't know what might be lost. Climate change isn't an abstract threat here, it's an existential one. Within this century, some of these islands may become uninhabitable. This is happening right now. In a part of India most Indians have never visited and most of the world doesn't know exists. India built thousands of stepwells, architectural marvels that are part staircase, part well, part temple. The Chandbauri in Rajasthan has 3,500 steps arranged in perfect geometric symmetry, descending 13 stories underground. Built in the 9th century, it still functions. These weren't just water sources, they were social spaces, cooling systems, and artistic expressions. During hot seasons, the temperature at the bottom could be 5 to 6 degrees cooler than the surface. Women gathered here to collect water, socialize, and escape the heat. The architecture created natural air circulation and evaporative cooling. Sustainable climate control centuries before electricity. Many stepwells fell into disuse and disrepair after British colonization introduced piped water systems. Only recently have they been recognized as architectural heritage. The Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. 7 levels of sculptural panels depicting mythology, with over 800 elaborately carved sculptures. This is engineering as art, infrastructure as cultural expression. The idea that utility and beauty must be separate is modern and Western. These structures reject that division entirely. India's constitution is, well, the longest of any sovereign nation, 146,385 words in its English version. It was written by a committee of 299 people over nearly 3 years, and the original handwritten manuscript is a work of art, each page illuminated by artists from Shantiniketan. But here's the fascinating contradiction. It was written by people who had never governed a free nation, creating a democracy for a population where 80% were illiterate. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who chaired the drafting committee, was from the Dalit community, the lowest in the traditional caste hierarchy, and he wrote legal protections against the very discrimination he had experienced. The Constitution simultaneously outlawed caste discrimination and created affirmative action systems, which are called reservations, to remedy historical injustice. It guaranteed universal adult suffrage immediately, no property requirements, no literacy tests. In 1950, this was radical. Many Western democracies still had restricted voting rights. The Constitution's preamble added the word secular in 1976, but the concept was there from the start. No state religion, equal treatment of all religions, and the right to practice and propagate any faith. This document is India's greatest accomplishment and its ongoing experiment. Can a diverse, complex society hold together through shared legal principles rather than ethnic or religious uniformity? Mumbai's Dabbawalas deliver 200,000 home-cooked lunches daily with a 6 Sigma accuracy rating. 1 mistake per 6 million deliveries. They're the most efficient logistics system in the world, operating without technology. Here's how it works. A lunch is cooked at home in the suburbs, picked up by a dabbawala, transported via bicycle and train to central Mumbai, sorted multiple times, and delivered to an office, all within 3 hours, hot and to the right person. The system uses a color coding scheme with letters and numbers that requires minimal literacy. Each dabbawala handles the same route daily, building muscle memory and familiarity. They operate as a cooperative. No bosses, equal profit sharing, and all decisions made democratically. Harvard Business School and FedEx have studied this system. Prince Charles visited them during a trip to India. They've been invited to speak at business schools worldwide. Why does this matter? Because it proves that technology isn't always the answer. Sometimes human networks with clear systems and shared purpose outperform algorithms and apps. In an age obsessed with AI and automation, the Dabbawalas are a reminder that human coordination, trust, and consistency can create excellence. Let's talk about what life actually costs in India, because this is where assumptions break down completely. India isn't one economy, it's dozens, operating side by side. In a tier 1 city like Mumbai or Bangalore, A one-bedroom apartment in a decent area costs between 25,000 and 50,000 rupees per month, which is about 300 to 600 US dollars. A daily meal at a local restaurant is 150 to 300 rupees, or $2 to $4. A mid-range restaurant for two will run you about 1,200 to 2,000 rupees, or $15 to $25. Monthly groceries are 8,000 to 15,000 rupees, which is roughly $100 to $180. A monthly metro or public transport pass is 1,000 to 2,000 rupees, about $12 to $25. Domestic help for cleaning and cooking comes to 8,000 to 15,000 rupees per month, so that's $100 to $180. And a gym membership is about 2,000 to 5,000 rupees per month, or $25 to $60. Mumbai, by the way, is expensive by Indian standards, but still about 70% cheaper than New York. But here's where it gets interesting. You can live in India on $500 a month or $5,000 a month, and both lifestyles exist simultaneously. In a Tier 2 or Tier 3 city, those costs drop by 40 to 60%. In rural areas, they drop by 70 to 80%. What this means practically, a software engineer in Bangalore earning 1.5 million rupees annually, which is about 18,000 US dollars, can afford domestic help, occasional travel, dining out regularly, and still save 30% of their income. That same salary in San Francisco wouldn't even cover rent. The purchasing power paradox is real. India has extreme income inequality, but also extreme cost of living variability. A middle-class Indian lifestyle with help for household work, affordability of domestic travel, and access to healthcare can feel materially comfortable despite lower nominal wages. Healthcare costs are dramatically lower. A doctor's visit costs 500 to 1,000 rupees, or $6 to $12. An MRI scan costs 3,000 to 6,000 rupees, that's $40 to $75, compared to $500 to $3,000 in the US. But here's the catch. While daily living is affordable, imported technology, international travel, and luxury goods are extremely expensive due to import duties. An iPhone costs significantly more in India than in the US. International flights are expensive. Imported cars carry more than 100% import duties. This creates a unique economic reality. You can live well locally, but face barriers to global consumption. So here's what I learned researching India for 3 months. It's not one story. It's a million stories happening simultaneously. Ancient and futuristic, traditional and disruptive, unified and fragmented. Every generalization about India is true somewhere and false elsewhere. The India of Bollywood films exists, the India of poverty exists, the India of tech innovation exists, the India of centuries-old traditions exists. They're all real, all happening at once in the same constitutional framework. What I hope you take from this: resist simple narratives. Anytime someone tells you a single story about a place with 1.4 billion people, they're lying. Maybe not intentionally, but they're leaving out 1.399 billion other stories. If this changed how you think about India or any country you've never visited, let me know in the comments. And if you want me to research another country with this level of depth, looking beyond stereotypes and tourism brochures, tell me which one. Thanks for watching. Now you know a different India. Not better or worse than what you thought before, just more complete.